introduce her.
James Strong, Cody Tanner, host on the mic. About to dive deep, keep it live, that's right.
Welcome to the Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James Strong, joined once again by my co-host Cody Tanner on this very special season in review show. Cody, how are you today?
James, I'm terrible because we have to talk about this stupid season. No, other than that, no, I'm doing all right. Doing all right. James, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. We've got a special guest today, Cody. I don't want to keep her in the wings too long. Why don't you introduce her?
Yeah, so big shout out to this girl. Her and I met at a wedding a few years ago that I was DJing. And she wound up going out to the bar with us afterwards, and it turned into a wild night of prayer and drunkenness, people hitting cars. It was a crazy time. But it was awesome. She is Jill from Ohio. Everyone say hello.
Jill from Ohio.
Jill from Ohio. That is absolutely right.
Did you call her into the show or something?
Jill from Ohio.
That's literally what it sounds like. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Jill. We always love having you on here. When you're on here, you always bring some passion and some fire. And some frustration.
Frustration is the best word to use for it.
Yeah. So this show, for those of you that watched the last show and can't tell, James and I are wearing the same clothes because it's literally been 30 minutes. We just did the recap show for the Ravens game, and we're just going to go ahead and do another show about the recap while it's fresh, while it's all fresh, while it's in our mind, while we're frustrated, while we're angry, while we're disappointed, while we're sad, while we're depressed. All the things is what we're feeling. So I guess to start off with, nobody thought we'd be 10-7. There's some power and something to be said about that. Everyone had us losing this division.
Vegas had us at 7.5 wins.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said though about, and it's hard to say it, but I feel like Cleveland didn't perform up to what they should have. Cincinnati started slow per usual. And we had Baltimore's number early in the year. That's about it. Other than that, I feel like Pittsburgh did everything that I thought they were going to do. At the beginning of the year when we did our preview show of the season, we saw that 3-game stretch. We saw that 4-game stretch to end the year. And we knew it was going to be rough. And we went in there and we didn't even compete. And so, I don't know. I'm proud that we made it to the playoffs, but I'm tired of just making it to the playoffs. So I'll let you guys share some opinions before we go into a little bit more of a breakdown.
That's it. I think we should all be frustrated regardless of how optimistic you try to be. I'm not the kind of person who's a participation trophy guy. Did you do something that's worth getting an award or no? I don't want a participation trophy. And that's what it feels like making the playoffs and losing in the first round again. So got to get better. They got to figure it out. They got to get the key pieces together, and whether people like it or not, some things need to change in the coaching staff, and I think we may have differing opinions on who needs to change and how many of them, but I think a lot of faces need to change regardless.
Clean house.
Dang.
Dang. I said, listen, you're not a Steelers fan unless you just yell clean house at the end of one of the disappointing losses. So get rid of everybody. TJ Watt can stay. Cam Hayward can stay. Everybody goes. That's how I get at the end of a game. No, I think I was optimistic when we started playing semi well. I think I went into the season I'm not sure how this is going to pan out. I'm not sure if we're actually going to get any wins. I just thought it was going to be puzzle piece the season together, especially when we weren't sure who was going to be at quarterback when they started Fields. And then it was, are we going to play Russell? What's that actually going to look like? I think that has a lot to play with the season because there was no dominant leader for the full season. The offense doesn't know who to follow. The captains of the team, yes, of course we have Hayward, but your quarterback is a big core of your team, and we didn't know who it was going to be. So I think that played a lot into how we played and how our season panned out. But it's really disappointing. I'm kind of with you, James, on like, yeah, we made it to the playoffs, but we're still sitting where the Browns are sitting. We're still sitting where the Bengals are sitting. We're not in. Like, and that just, I'm sick of that.
Yeah, and with a worse draft pick.
Yes. Huh.
And the only pros that I would say to the whole quarterback controversy thing that happened is we're not giving up a 4th round pick. You know, the transition to putting Russell Wilson in there kept us a 4th round pick. We'll be giving Chicago a 6th round pick. But again, it's like, what are we going to use that pick for? I mean, at this point, there's so many holes in this team and so many question marks that I don't know what to prioritize. And I know that, you know, probably all three of us have different opinions. Every Steelers fan has a different opinion of what you need to prioritize. I think everyone would agree it needs to be quarterback, but you, at our draft position, you're not getting a starting quarterback.
And it's a bad draft class for quarterbacks. So you don't want to go into this draft class saying, I'm just going to find it in the draft.
Yep. You can't. It's not there.
I have friends who are like, we need to draft a quarterback. And I'm like, well, who's it going, you know? And at this point, like, questions of like, Russell, is he staying? Is he like, you know, I really would have liked to see Fields more, but I feel like once we took him out and then every time we put him in the game, it was always a run. They never gave him a pass option when he would go in the game. And so you set him up for failure the minute you put him in, you know, and the offense is confused because they're like, what are we, you know, anyway, so.
No, I'm with you on that. I felt like there wasn't enough creativity from the two quarterbacks we had. I felt there, like, and James and I discussed it during the beginning of the season. Imagine a play where Russell's line or where Justin's lined up as a wide receiver. And like there was so much creativity you could have done that I feel so many teams are doing. Like we're seeing creativity every single game out of Kansas City. We're seeing creativity out of Philadelphia. We're seeing drastic creativity out of Detroit with them throwing touchdown passes to their offensive linemen. And I mean, just the atmosphere that Dan Campbell has built there is crazy to me because Dan Campbell went, I don't know if you guys remember this, the last 4 seasons of him being a head coach, they were 3-13-1. Then they went 9-8. Then they went 12-5. And now they're 15-2, the number 2 seed, I believe. Number 1 seed.
They're number 1
in the NFL. Like,
what a go up.
That's creativity. That's, you know, originality. That's him creating an atmosphere. And I do believe that Mike Tomlin, because it's going to be a topic that comes up and we're there. And James and I talked about the show. Like it's important to reiterate to everybody, Mike Tomlin's not going anywhere. Like
Correct.
That's already been announced.
Right.
And I do love what he brings to the table, but at some point I feel like we got to stop running this family fest, this family environment. And sometimes you got to come down on guys and you got to punish people for not doing their job and stuff. And that was an issue we had with Antonio Brown, like all the stuff he was doing off the field, not punishing him, not taking it serious. And maybe Mike Tomlin's too soft, or maybe he's just soft-spoken or whatever you want to say. But at some point there needs to be someone in that locker room. And quite frankly, I would love it to be the quarterback,
right,
who comes down on these guys. A quarterback, it's got to be the quarterback or the head coach. And Mike Tomlin's not going to do it. Mike Tomlin's not going to come down in a way that, you know, Dan Campbell or Bill Cowher would have. Like, that's just not going to happen. We're not going to see spit flying out of Mike Tomlin's face.
But then at that point, like, I almost want to argue you won't see a Super Bowl then, you know, at what expense? Like, you have to, the standard is the standard, whatever that means, you know, like what's standard that we get to the playoffs and we lose the first round every single year after year when we
that
make
is
it to
his
the
legacy.
When we make it, right. Everybody's like, well, he, you know, hasn't had a losing season, and that's fine. That's great. But like, that's not top caliber. That's not like, oh, we're going to go down in history because we haven't lost. I'm like, how about getting some Super Bowl wins would be nice, or a round 1 playoff win at this point. Like,
yeah. And I'm not sharing this for the meme purpose of it. I'm sharing it for the genuine score of it.
No.
I do want to share this because I found it online the other day and I want to pull it up. Actually, I found it online early this morning when I was working. We're not going to talk about it though. Right here. So these are the last, 7 playoff games under Mike Tomlin. Going back to being down to Denver before halftime, 20-6. Fourth quarter being down 30-15 against the Ravens, 33-9 against the New England Patriots, 21-0 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm pretty sure that wasn't Blake Bortles leading that team, was it? Because I think it might have been. I don't remember.
Yeah.
28-0 in Ben's last playoff game, 35-7, 21-0 against. I mean, this is just pitiful excuse of an offense. And this is showing how many years has it been that we struggle to get started. Like, it's been the same issue over and over and over again about slow starts, wanting to control the pace. You can't control the pace if you're not putting up points.
Nope.
I would have liked to have seen all those at like halftime or something consistent. It seems exceedingly cherry picked, but there's no arguing that they didn't do a good job in any of those games.
Oh, I can tell you.
But I mean, one of those is a fourth quarter score with 4 minutes left. So they probably put that as soon as Baltimore scored one more time. And
they're like, get this on here.
Yeah, this is the score we're going to put for this one because it looks the worst.
Right. Because they did. I mean, I know you guys did your recap of the game, but like, you know, I'm sick of us picking it up in the second half, waiting for the last 2 minutes of a quarter to do something.
Yeah.
Like, start dominant down the field, you know? You never see like Philadelphia playing it safe the first quarter. Like, they march down the field, you know? So
yeah. And James, just to kind of, because you asked for it, and I'm going to tell you now, all of those games at halftime, Pittsburgh and Denver was 10-9. So Pittsburgh was up 10-9 at one point in that game. The next game, was
that the game that Tim
that doesn't
that was
match
Tim
up with the
Tebow, right?
score.
I know that's a wrong score. Hang on.
You're not even looking at the right game according to what we're looking at here.
Hold on, I found it. I don't have that game. I have the Patriots game. So that final was 36-17. The halftime score was 17-9.
Yeah, so they give you the 33-9 because it looks way worse.
Yeah, but I mean, they put up 0 points in the third quarter, so 17-9 at halftime. The Chiefs game that we lost 18-16 was 7-12. Pittsburgh leading at halftime and lost that one. Jacksonville was 28
game either.
28-14 at halftime. They showed us the 21-0. The Cleveland game that started off 28-0 was 35-10, so not much better.
At halftime?
Yep.
That was a rough game.
There were 3 more scores in the last 146 of the first half?
Yeah. 35-10 was at halftime.
Wow.
The Kansas City one that they showed 35-7 was 21-7 at halftime.
Yeah. Yeah, they just basically picked the most lopsided moments of each of these games and
but quite frankly, but I don't mind that because that's the point. You should never let it get that lopsided. That, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Never wake up and have a bad day, Cody. You should never hit snooze on your alarm, and you should never be late to work, and you should never swear when you're angry.
If it's listen, James, if it's go to work or go home and not have, well, I guess they still have work and they still make millions, so it doesn't really matter. But I mean, if it's I can go and pursue something, I'm bringing my A game. James, you know that. You know that.
Every time. I worked
now that I'm
for a while, bud.
You know that now. I don't know. Okay, real quick. The Bills game was 21-7 at halftime. And the last one, the Ravens game, was 21-0. So at halftime. It's almost got progressively worse. I don't know if there's anything to be said to that. And just because James wants consistency, there was a game somewhere in the middle of that was a wildcard game that we won 30-12. That we were up 20-6 at halftime. So one game against the Miami
Dolphins game.
Yeah,
I was at that one. That was a good game. That was a very cold game.
Yeah, that was with Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon with the 3 Bs.
Mm-hmm.
And Boswell. Brown, Ben,
Ah.
Boswell. all the
Boswell for
Bs.
president.
And Martavis Bryant.
Boswell for MVP. He's the shining star.
I hate that he didn't break the record for most field
I
goals in a
do
season.
too.
He was what, 6 away?
4, I think.
I was gonna say I
4.
thought it was under 5. Oh
Yeah.
man.
I think 4 to break it, 3 to tie it at the end there. But let's start talking about this from like a player perspective in a season in review, right? Let's get into the quarterbacks a little bit. So we got to see Justin Fields at the beginning. And although there were some good moments here and there, it seemed that he consistently didn't get past his first read in his progression, which is difficult to sustain drives and score a lot of points. And we saw a ton of field goals, and that's a large reason as to why Chris Boswell had such a successful season, because we just didn't get into the end zone very often. So that's when Russ came into play, and we did score more points. And then the final stretch came around, and we just stopped having success on the offense at all. But from a starting quarterback perspective, with Justin Fields' 6 starts, he had 5 touchdown passes. Russell Wilson's 11 starts, he had 15 touchdown passes. So you saw a more efficient offense with Russ. That's not necessarily saying that Russ did a tremendous job, because I don't think he did, but there were at least some games where the offense really clicked and put a bunch of points up. And we did not see that with Justin in 6 games.
No. And again, I'll go back and defend Justin the same way I kind of did when they made the transition. The playbook was not as elaborate with Justin Fields in there. They did not let him throw the ball downfield or want him to. They wanted him to make safe plays, throw the ball outside, scramble, get some extra yards. I don't know if that was a Tomlin thing or an Arthur Smith thing. Quite frankly, I don't care who it was. I think it's unfair to compare them side by side with intentionality of this quarterback had more success than this quarterback when they weren't allowed to play the same way.
They certainly didn't have the same freedom as far as calling audibles. There's no doubt about that. But Justin threw a lot of deep balls. He just couldn't keep them in the field of play. He always threw it out of bounds when he threw a deep ball on the sideline, which doesn't even give your receivers a chance to try to make the play.
I'm curious how much they practiced it.
Stop.
Genuinely.
You go to a practice, you'll see it 100 times. You know.
I'm going to practice next year. I'm going.
Are you?
Yeah.
All right.
There.
Calling the shots.
I just think that we didn't get enough out of either one of these guys. And the worst part is that this was a drastically better passing offense than it was last year, which is scary to think that. But it's still nowhere near good enough to take that next step and be victorious in the playoffs. We've just got to be more consistent and use the whole field. It's the same argument we had with Kenny Pickett not using the middle of the field, with Mitch Trubisky not being able to complete a pass at all, with the guys previous to that just struggling from the quarterback position, never getting more than a couple games in a row with any kind of consistency. And you've got to be able to string more than 2 or 3 games in a row and expect to have good results. So I feel like there were some steps in the right direction versus the previous year, but we're just sitting here with the same questions at the end and 3 guys that were on the roster and none of them under contract for next year. So they have to be very intentional about what they're going to do. And you probably aren't going to be able to afford to bring both Russ and Justin Fields back. And I don't know if you bring Russ, if Justin's going to want to come back as the backup. He might want to try to go somewhere else to get an opportunity to start, especially with a weak quarterback class in the draft.
And the number of teams that have quarterback issues or quarterback questions.
Yeah.
So that list is growing every day, it feels like. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we could bring either one of them back and be better off next year than we were this year, because they'll have a full off season with the team. They'll have everything. They'll have, they would have had time with Arthur Smith. They would have had a general understanding of what the offense is trying to do, what they want to do. But I don't know that bringing back either of them, like I kind of talked about on the last show, is what I want. I almost would rather struggle with somebody else than bring back somebody just to bring them back, just because there's some, it's going back to Mason Rudolph days, which quite frankly, we might have gotten better play this year to Mason Rudolph. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, then I guess it's the question of like, we know his weaknesses at this point. So do we bring him back knowing where his weak areas are to actually develop that? Or do we take a gamble on somebody completely new and being, like blinded by that? Quotation marks around that because, everybody's scouting everybody all the time. So, but like we actually know the ins and outs at this point of Justin Fields. In my opinion, he's the one I'd want to bring back just because if it works, then we have a longer time frame versus Russ.
That's fair.
So, but I have been leery of OSU quarterbacks. Historically, they're a little rough in the NFL. So luckily, I mean, CJ Stroud out here having a season, but
Jill from Ohio,
Jill from Ohio
quarterbacks.
Listen, I'm from Ohio, but I don't like OSU. I actually don't really care for college football, but
that's
because all of my passion and energy goes into these dang Steelers
and depression,
and they just suck the energy out of me. It's fine.
No, that's fair. And I don't want to linger around the quarterback room too long because it's obviously the glaring issue that needs to be addressed, but there's also so many issues on this team. James is so strong-willed for, we got to address that defensive line. Cam Hayward isn't getting any younger. Larry Ogunjobi can't even perform like a backup. Like we have Keanu Benton, who hasn't quite came into his own, but he has moments where it's like, hey, if we get this a little bit more consistently, this guy's a stud. There's question marks on that defensive line. There's question marks on the offensive line with the Troy Fautanu injury. Is he going to be fully ready to come back next year? If he does, is he going to be the starting right tackle? Are they moving Broderick back to left? That would be the assumption. Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier are obviously probably the two guys going to easily win their starting battles. And then, in my opinion, and I thought about this during the game, Isaac Seumalo, man. We also have James Daniels, which is he under contract again?
No.
Okay. James Daniels, or excuse me, Isaac Seumalo. What a player he was in Philadelphia.
And even last year for us.
And even last year for us. But I would argue to a degree that he does better with veteran guys around him. I think that's where that comes from. I think there might be just so much youth and young leadership on that offensive line with Zach Frazier being a rookie that maybe there was some miscommunication all year. I feel like maybe that played a factor in Isaac Seumalo's issues. I mean, he played with Jason Kelsey for most of his career. Like a phenomenal Pro Bowl center.
Yeah.
And Jordan Mailata was to his left. Let's be honest. He was in a really good situation there. And I think that you're right. I think you're onto this, Cody, is that he's probably in the back of his mind, is Zach getting all the calls right? And then he's also on the other side thinking, man, Dan got smoked on that last play. I'm probably going to have to help him on this.
Yep.
And then the next thing you know is he's got a defensive tackle in his chest pushing him back 10 yards. And I think he didn't have the strength he had in previous years from that pectoral injury early in the preseason, and just a bad year for him. And I thought he got worse as the year went on. And I think some of that is probably in relation to how bad Dan Moore was. Giving up 2 sacks in the first half of the year and then 10 in the last. That's incredible. Just awful, awful performance. We did get to see a little Spencer Anderson at the end of the year, and I thought Spencer looked good. So maybe he might be startable in a pinch in replace of Seumalo. I don't know. But you really need Fautanu to be healthy next year, and you need Broderick to at least be better than what Dan Moore was.
Which is not asking for a lot.
No, it isn't.
Let's be clear here.
Just single digit sacks instead of double.
Yeah.
Some growth. Baby steps. Baby steps.
Yeah.
That's it. Now, at least it's a young offensive line now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be way worse if these guys were all 10-year vets and we're talking about them being bad. But Dan Moore is working itself out because he's an unrestricted free agent. He's gone. James Daniels, they weren't planning on keeping. Seumalo, I think, is the last year of his deal. The other 4 guys are very young, rookies or first-year guy. So I think there's at least is something to be optimistic about with the offensive line group. We don't have a bunch of guys that are undersized, getting pushed around, They're strong. They're athletic, and they're going to grow together. And I think we at least have some good foundational pieces there. But if you've got some good foundational pieces, you better be able to figure out how to run a dang ball.
Yeah. Real quick, because we talked about the guys that are leaving in free agency. I want to go down this list of free agents, and we're going to go around the room. James, you can start. Jill, and I'll finish each time. Just say sign or walk. If you'd sign them or if you'd let them walk. So we're going to go down this list real quick. Russell Wilson.
I'm signed.
You say sign. I say let him walk.
Walk.
Yeah.
Kyle Allen.
Signed for minimum.
Yeah.
Sign for minimum.
Yeah.
Justin Fields.
Walk.
I think we go with Justin Fields. I say we sign him.
I'm signed if it's within reason. I'm signed if it's within reason.
Yes. If he's asking an insane amount, no. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Najee Harris.
Walk.
Walk. Not because I don't want him, but because I just don't think the offense can help. We just said don't explain it. Van Jefferson.
But that's such a good talking point. Sorry, walk.
No, yeah, let's pause for a second and talk Najee Harris.
Okay, that's fair.
This is important.
He deserves it.
It's a year in review. I don't think Najee has been bad at any point. He's just never going to be that dude that's averaging 4.5 yards a carry and busting off lots of long runs. And now he's like 28, about to turn 29. He's not going to get faster. He's not going to become more elusive. We've seen the best of Najee Harris.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not committed to that. We've seen the best because I think if he goes somewhere and goes into a really good situation where he has a better offensive line and a better play caller, I think he can go off for like 1,500 yards.
But who's going to sign him as their feature back at this point off of what he's done in Pittsburgh?
Well, I feel like he was so inconsistent. That was my biggest issue with him, where it was like we would have games where he would fight for every yard and like you saw the grit. And I'm like, that's amazing. And then the next game, it would just be like, well, there he is.
There would be a difference between plays, not even games. We would see both in the same game.
But again, I feel like I'm in the middle where it's like, is he worth signing? No, in my opinion. I think I like Jaylen Warren. I've liked him better the whole season. I have buddies that I watch the games with. They literally hate Najee so much. They're like, he's so awful, blah, blah, blah. I don't think he's terrible. Actually, I think he's good. But what combination of it is play call? Because how many times did we see him run up the middle where there was no path and just get knocked out? And I'm like, if there was some creative kind of play call where he can get a few extra yards, maybe we'd see more. But also he is like you said, like 28, and I don't know if it's going to get better. So, but I still say let him walk at the end of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm let him walk. I think the problem is, and again, I think there's a couple reasons. I think whether it's blocking, whether it's play calling, play style, whatever it is, I just don't think it has been a good fit. And that's saying a lot from someone who has rushed for 1,000 yards 4 years in a row. Like, that's astonishing for the lack of blocking he's had and other things. Now, there's been other times where his vision has just been off. I mean, we had Nick Pretzel on the show a couple weeks and we talked about Najee's vision. There's times where there's a hole to his right, but he'd rather go up behind the tackle where there's a hole the size that Jaylen Warren could fit in and not him. And so there's a bunch of question marks with his vision. There's a bunch of question marks, I think, with his, I don't know if it's health or effort. Like like you said,
it's
some
not
days.
health. It's not health because he's never missed a game.
But is that because he's just a workhorse? Is that his person? I mean, I know guys in real life.
Yeah.
I know guys in real life that are tough, but they can't always give 100% because they're tough and dealing with 75% or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, last year he had a metal implant in his shoe for like 7 games.
Yeah.
Plantar fasciitis injury.
Oh, I
like
forgot about
he
that.
shouldn't have even been playing through that, but he didn't even miss a game.
Yeah.
So I think he's very tough, but in the end, I think he's closer to the end of his career than he is the beginning. And that was my issue with drafting a 24-year-old first-round running back rookie in the first place.
Yep, that's fair. Okay, so we all said walk. Wide receiver Van Jefferson.
Walk.
Yeah, I'm indifferent.
I'm walk, mostly because Mike Williams.
Yeah.
It has
Sure.
to be cheap for me to keep him. I'm not
That's
keeping
fine.
him at 10 million. At 2, sure.
Yeah, sign for 2 to 3. I would sign for 2 to 3.
Okay. Yeah.
Tight end Michael Pruitt.
Walk.
Yeah. Walk.
Guard James Daniels.
Walk.
Walk.
Nate Herbig.
For cheap, sure.
Yep. I was gonna say sign.
Yeah, sign. He's a solid backup.
I like.
Unfortunately, he got injured this year. That's where I'm at with it. Dan Moore Jr.
That was a rotator.
Dan Moore Jr.
Dan,
Walk
No.
this
Walk
way.
him.
No.
No, dance his butt out of here.
Run.
If
Let
you're
the
not
door
hitting
hit
him
you.
with a cattle prod on the way out. It's not a bad.
D-line Isaiah Loudermilk.
My goodness, we have a lot.
Walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Walk.
Yep. Landon Roberts.
Walk.
I think walk.
Mark Robinson does what he does, and he's younger and faster.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm walk. Tyler Matakevich.
Walk.
Walk.
Walk. It's been too long. Dante Jackson.
March him out immediately.
Yeah, I agree.
Deuces.
Bye-bye.
Deuces. Cameron Sutton.
Bye-bye.
Yep.
Walk. Yep. And DeMonte KZ.
Get out of here.
I'm indifferent for that one. I mean,
If he
whatever.
comes back for league minimum as depth, that's fine. If we
like,
can't address the safety position somewhere
that-
else, is where I'm at with it.
That's yeah.
I think Ryan Watts will be fine in his place, and he
That's
needs to
fair.
start developing somebody.
Ryan McCullum.
Don't care at all.
Not at all.
Jeremiah Moon.
Walk.
Yep.
Yeah,
Walk.
don't care. And last one, Jalen Warren.
Jalen is a restricted free agent, so he's not going to hit free agency.
You don't think he'll hit it at all?
No, because they'll tender him because they'll be able to do so for like $2 million, and nobody will even get a chance to see him in free agency. So
Fair enough.
we'll keep Jalen without having to expose him and without
Nice.
having to pay him big.
That's a win for us.
Yeah.
One of the few.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, we're all on the same page here. I think we had like maybe signed 2 or 3 of these guys, and none of them at a high price.
Mhm.
I don't know where Pittsburgh sits cap wise for next year, but I know they're going to have some spending money. Hopefully, they can go out and sign somebody in free agency in some of these positions to add depth, and not one of these Preston Smith guys, not one of these Larry Ogunjobi. Like, give me someone who's had a rough go at another team with a team that drafted them, and they need a fresh start somewhere else. Like the Mike Williams thing. I mean, bringing Mike Williams in, I think could have been a lot more productive had we used him more. There was a game the first 2 games he didn't even play after we signed him. Like, it's just crazy to me. But yeah, I'm on board with doing something different with a lot of these position groups next year because I don't want to bring half these guys back.
Over half.
Yeah, it is over half.
I mean, we said walk more than not.
We did. Do we want to break down the running back room? We talked about it a little bit with Jalen Warren and Najee and stuff like that. I think Cordarrelle Patterson needs to not be on the team anymore as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exceedingly important that they move on from Cordarrelle Patterson. Jonathan Ward would have been a much better option back there in the kick returns.
Yeah. Jalen's obviously going to be back next year without Najee. Would you prefer Pittsburgh to draft a running back or pick somebody up in free agency to kind of dual head with him?
I think that 4th round pick that we kept from not losing Justin Fields, not using him as much, is a great spot to address it. Right around there, 3rd, 4th round. Maybe you luck out and find another James Conner type where you can have a feature back for not a huge price. I know Cody and I have talked a lot about Cam Scatterbo. I don't know that he will last that long. I
don't think Jill knows who that is.
I don't know who that is, but I'm here for the ride. So
Do yourself a favor after this show, Jill, and just Google him and watch some highlights. He is incredible. He runs like a
Okay.
250-pound running back.
Nice.
He's a thick white dude that's 5'11", and he runs like Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
That's the best way
Oh.
of describing it.
Okay.
He runs angry, and I think that he's probably going to go in the second round somewhere, but I also expect him to run slow, like a mid 4.6 kind of guy, and that might let him fall to the third round. Let's not forget, James Conner was like a 4.65.
Mm-hmm.
He's had like 2 or 3 Pro Bowl seasons in the NFL. He's just fine.
Yeah, didn't he put up 18 touchdowns with Arizona one year?
Yeah. And he had pretty good years with us. He was just injured all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you probably have to at least have some sort of investment in this position. And I don't want to see them spend like $10 million on a starter.
No, and they shouldn't, because Jaylen Warren has proven to be capable enough that we shouldn't bring anybody in to start over him, in my opinion. Anyone that comes in should be an accessory to him. So that's where I'm at with that. Tight end group, we're obviously going to have Pat, and you were going to say.
Do you want to talk about our sponsors, Cody?
Oh yes, I would love to talk about our sponsor. So for I almost forgot, James. Thank you.
You want me to read it? I got it pulled up.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So support from Steelers by the Lake podcast is provided in part by the Edinburgh Hotel Bar at 100 Meadville Street in downtown Edinburgh, offering a variety of lunch and dinner items every day, plus catering services and a large room for private parties. Information is available at 814-734-5103 or online at edinburghhotel.tripod.com.
That is correct. That is correct. We love those guys. Pat over there is a great guy, great Steelers fan, big Steelers bar. It's a good time. It's a fun place to go hang out, watch a Steelers game. They oftentimes will play Renegade, and it gets pretty hyped.
Yes.
So it's
Every
a good
game.
time. Every game they need to. Yep. Yeah, tight end group. Obviously, Pat Freiermuth will be back. He's on an extended contract. Darnell Washington will be back again. And then we will also still have Connor Hayward, even though he's technically fullback, halfback, tight end, whatever he is. I do expect them to target this position, if not in the draft and free agency. One of the two, more than likely bringing in another guy. Maybe even
I think
undrafted.
this is a good one for a late round pick to try and see if you can get upgrade over Connor Hayward. And moving on from Michael Pruitt is the avenue to get that available on the roster.
Yeah.
I think Pat had a better season than last year. I think it was a step back in the right direction, other than a couple untimely drops at the end of the regular season and beginning of the postseason. He was very good, very reliable all season. Back over 60 catches, 7 touchdowns. That's what you're looking for. I mean, sure, we would like to see more, but he's capable of more. They just have to use him more. And I like that the direction is going the right way with Darnell Washington, from barely being used at all his rookie season to his second season, now getting involved a little bit and showing some capability as a receiver and honestly some dominance as a run blocker. So I think you're like one piece away from having a really nice tight end room.
No, go ahead.
I wish we would have targeted Darnell more. Like, he is 6'7", 260 some pounds. Like, who is gonna cover that? No one. All season,
Nobody's proven to so far. They haven't thrown it to him, and he's been covered yet.
I just feel like that is one of our weakest spots that we don't utilize.
Yeah.
Because we have the athletes for that position and we just don't use them. And then when we actually do, it works. And I'm like, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? Like, why are we not doing this more?
Darnell Washington, 19 receptions for 200 yards this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's over 10 yards per catch. That's a first down every time he catches the ball.
I feel like we did not utilize him like we can. I think that would be my hope for next season, is to like actually utilize our tight ends. And a 6'7" dude, like, come on.
Yeah, especially down the stretch. Cody and I talked about this a few times. He had like 1 catch in the final 5 games or 4 games.
Yeah.
That's inexcusable when you're having an issue with physicality and other teams being more physical than you. your monster tight end that they're rumored of saying he's about 315 these days. Like, why are you not just dumping it off to him and let him go truck a few people? Like,
Literally, he would take him out. I mean,
and he does every time.
Listen, I would love to see one of those tight end screens. The little flip pass that we used to do to Heath Miller.
I was waiting for it in the postseason game. I really was, and they never.
Well, and he only got what, one? I don't know how many targets he got last.
3
game.
targets in the last game.
Three targets. Okay,
but 2 drops.
3?
Technically, I mean, one was at his ankles. It's
right.
very hard.
Bad throw.
Yeah.
So, but he had a catch early in that game and went for 9 yards.
Yes.
So,
but it should be way more than 3 targets, in my opinion.
Well, there were some games that we talked about when we do our 3 keys to success that I just said I want 10 targets to the tight end room.
Right.
I just want them to be involved in the game plan. And so, and maybe they were more. Maybe that was a Russell Wilson thing where he couldn't go through his progressions, or the offensive line wasn't blocking well enough for him to do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
We only see probably 30% of what the team wants to do because we don't see the breakdowns. We don't see what the team was trying to do. We don't see mistakes. We we can watch a play and a guy ran the wrong route. We won't know that unless they go outwardly say it. Like,
right.
So again, I really, really hope, I mean, you signed Pat Freiermuth to a fairly big deal. I really hope we utilize him more next year for him being as good as he is and only being targeted 47 times this year. That is
what?
Horrible.
That's
47.
That's it?
Or excuse me, 78.
Oh, I was like, whoa.
He's got 65 catches. That don't
Sorry.
matter.
I was looking at Jalen Warren. I was
like, there
but
is
still,
no way.
78 targets for Pat Freiermuth is not enough, in my opinion.
No.
I want that number to be upwards of 90, 100 targets for that number 1 tight end. In an offense where the offensive coordinator apparently likes to use tight ends. That'd be nice.
Yeah, and realistically, I think if you give Pat Freiermuth 100 targets and he continues catching them at the rate that he is, now you're talking about 80 to 85 catches, and we're talking about our Pro Bowl tight end, Pat Freiermuth, instead of just our tight end, Pat Freiermuth, because he has the ability to do it, but he can't do it if the ball's not in his hands.
He had 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He averaged a touchdown every, 10.17 targets?
Call it 9.
Yeah.
Because 65 catches, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, whatever.
Just, I would like you utilize him. Oh my God. I don't know. Again, I do think it's a lot of, what don't we see? What I try to remind myself that when I'm like, why aren't we using our tight ends?
Yeah.
So
I think a big thing that James and I are big on for next year is also we need to sign or draft or something an actual specified fullback. We need to have somebody in that position able to block effectively, whether that's run blocking or pass blocking. There's going to be plays where if we have a tight end block or if we have a fullback blocking, there's going to be play action plays where you need to make sure that he's getting the blind side when the quarterback rolls out. Like there's certain things that a fullback does that we are missing out on. And I think we missed out on that a lot in red zone situations in 3rd and 4th down and less than a yard to go. Which again, we saw the Ravens last week do it with a tight end at quarterback position. Like there's other ways to do it, but I think Pittsburgh would benefit from a fullback. With the style of football that they want to do, they need a fullback.
Yeah.
And at the very least, if they don't use a fullback, they need to be very open about using someone from another position at the fullback position, whether it be going back to the Henry Mondo type thing or a linebacker who is just not scared to just plow in there like Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson would be a perfect option as a former running back himself, or even just using one of your tight ends who's actually the size of a tight end, not
Connor Hayward.
Not Connor Hayward, who's only 230 pounds and just not a thick dude. He's not a thick, dense guy, which is what you need to be at fullback.
Yeah.
Do you guys have an idea? Like, do you have somebody in mind that you would want to be a fullback or
Scatterbo?
Okay.
He ain't big enough, Cody.
I know.
He's only 215,
but the person
he's got the mentality for it.
Yeah, he'd probably do better than anyone else we have on the team right now in that position.
I think what I would like to see out of the current roster is some Darnell Washington back there.
That's
Because
my
then
thought.
if you need to use him as a pass blocker, we already know he can do it.
Yeah.
And if he gets a couple steps of momentum into somebody, he's driving that guy back.
Yeah.
But then you're in the situation of who's filling in at his spot. And that's
Right.
why we need to have another tight end who's capable of taking on an outside linebacker, because Connor Hayward is not capable of that.
No.
Michael Pruitt was fine at that, but he's like 32, and you need to go with a younger direction.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a defensive lineman on the roster capable of it right now.
Yeah, probably not. Michael Pruitt is going to be 33 in March. So, yep, he's getting there. I feel like we broke down offensive line pretty well. I don't know if we necessarily need to target that again.
No, I think we're fine there.
Defensive line, we kind of went over it. I think Cam Hayward is really, really dealing with some kind of injury. Again, we talked about in the last show, more than likely a groin again, with how he was moving his body and limping and looking like he's in pain. And that's unfortunate because he definitely, we talked about Najee being tough. Cam Hayward is definitely tough.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get a playoff win, and he's given his all to this franchise, which is just amazing. And I love the guy.
Yeah.
But other than him, that defensive line, him and Keanu, that defensive line has a lot of questions. Larry Ogunjobi shouldn't be back. Preston Smith shouldn't be back. There's a lot of guys that are under contract that I'm like, I don't want to see them again next year.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is that there needs to be an upgrade over Larry Ogunjobi. He's just not given us anywhere near enough to continue marching him out there as a starting defensive lineman. So that's one of the biggest frustrations for me. If you're looking at the drop-off in production from the outside linebacker unit, why is TJ not getting more sacks? It's because all that quarterback needs to do is step inside of him every single time because he knows that Larry Ogunjobi isn't pushing the pocket. He knows that Isaiah Loudermilk isn't pushing the pocket, and Montravius Adams isn't pushing the pocket, and Dean Lowry isn't pushing the pocket. No. And there just isn't another guy that's collapsing that guard. Cam Hayward did it all season long. He looked like he was 28 years old over there. Cam had an incredible year, and that's why he got an all-pro, first-team all-pro, and another Pro Bowl under his belt. Like, that's incredible. Nobody does that at that age. He's the oldest player to do that in, like, an incredible amount of time. That being said, Keanu Benton hasn't taken the full next step yet, and there's no one after that. It was supposed to be DeMarvin Leal. He's turned into an outside linebacker. He got injured early in the year and missed the rest of the season. Like, Loudermilk never developed, and then it's just back of the roster guys. And that's just not enough, man.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many questions on that defensive front that I don't know how you can address it all in an offseason, which is very concerning. I feel like they're going to go out and they're going to sign some old, nearing the end of his career, defensive end or defensive tackle to come in and be a positional piece, and it's going to fail miserably like we continue to see. I almost think you got to invest at this point, obviously in the draft, highly in the draft. This needs to be one of the first 3 picks.
Yeah.
In my opinion, first 2. And I think that you need to address it again in the draft. I think you need to address that D-line twice. And it's hard. It's going to be hard to do. But that's kind of where I'm at with it.
And maybe the way you do that is the early pick is your defensive end type. There's a guy, I believe, by the name of Shamar Stewart, who's 6'7", 290, long, athletic, an absolute stalwart against the run, and doesn't have a ton of pass rush repertoire quite yet, but has very good explosiveness. He's expected to be a back half of the first round kind of guy. That size is perfect for a Pittsburgh Steelers defensive end who kicks inside on nickel in pass rush situations. And he would collapse the pocket. He is someone that does that. And then I think you could kind of pursue like a strictly run-stopping nose tackle. And I'm not talking about a 6'3", 305-pound guy. I'm talking about a dude that's like 6'2", 345, looks like Casey Hampton and eats like him too. Like you need somebody who is stout in the middle that is difficult to move and requires two people. And they just haven't had it in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's probably been since Casey Hampton, right? I mean, Casey Hampton was probably the biggest guy we had in that position in a long time.
Yeah. I mean, Javon Hargrave was awesome for a few years. But
Dude was
he immovable in the middle? No, it was just more he was the penetration style guy.
Look at that belly. Look at that belly. Dude was a boulder.
Dude, I will never forget the year that Casey Hampton showed up so out of shape that they made him run laps for the first 3 weeks of training camp and didn't let him play until he was down 30 pounds. Every day at training camp, all he did was run laps.
Oh, man. Got to do what you got to do, I suppose.
Yeah.
We need a guy like that. I think we not only do we need the size and the build, we need the personality again. We need a funny guy on that defensive line. Casey Hampton was a jokester. He was a good time. He had fun with Aaron Smith and Brett Kiesel all the time, and they had good camaraderie. And more than anything, I think we need to get people on this team that just want to play football.
Yeah.
Like there's some guys like in the later half of this year that, man, when I watched him, Larry Ogunjobi didn't want to play.
Yeah.
I mean, you can argue that he tried on every play, but there were times where he could have done more, and I just felt like he stopped and was playing patty cake with the offensive lineman. I don't know. But that's just me. I don't know.
There's no doubt he didn't give us enough. Absolutely
Yeah.
none. He's making $9-10 million a year, and to get a sack and a half out of him, is that what it was this year? Like,
yeah,
come on. It's embarrassing. That's way too much money for below average play in my book.
Yeah,
sack and a half. Looking at the outside linebacker room, we got 3 guys in the room that aren't going anywhere. I almost feel like that's enough to warrant not worrying about that position. Like, you're going to need to either bring back Jeremiah Moon as a depth piece or get an undrafted free agent guy and see what he can do. But if I do not want to draft that position right now. I feel like that
yeah, I agree.
I think if you do, it's a 6th or 7th round guy, but not before. Yeah.
TJ Watt, obviously a slow end to the year, 193 consecutive snaps without any stat. No tackle, no pass breakup, no quarterback hit even. Nothing. I mean, not a single stat was registered in 193 stats or snaps. And that's wild to me.
Yeah, it's tough because, obviously we know there was at least one sack forced fumble that he had that was pulled
Taken
back
off.
because of a penalty. And that happened to him all year. I want to say there was at least 5 or 6 times where he got a strip sack and then they pulled it back off because of a penalty. So I feel like his season was drastically better than what the sack production shows. And he was an absolute monster against the run game this year, more so than he ever has been. So obviously we want to see him back into that 15 to 20 range in sacks. But I think a lot of the reason why he didn't have more this year is because we never had more than 3 guys getting after the quarterback on the field at the same time. We never had a 4th guy in that 4-man rush doing it. So that just makes it easy to double and triple team on TJ all game long when you know that one guy is fine to block Larry Ogunjobi.
Yeah, very unfortunate. Hopefully they can address that in the future. I think Alex Highsmith is going to have a breakout year next year if he stays healthy. I thought this year was
stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean,
Stay
6 sacks in 11 games isn't bad. I really feel like we could have even gotten more out of him, but I don't think he was 100% all 11 games. Nick Herbig came in and provided 5.5 sacks, which was phenomenal for his play time. I almost wish they'd convert one of these guys in like some of these nickel and dime packages to having one of those guys play a down lineman just to get some pass rush.
And they
I think
started that a little bit later on in the year using
Okay.
one on the inside.
Because then you
My
can have three
thing-
of these guys on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My only thing is, who are you putting on the inside? Because none of them are all that big. You definitely
I'd
can't
put
Nick
Highsmith.
in there.
I'd put Highsmith in there.
Yeah,
I'd
I
let
mean,
him
they
go to
could mess around with that next year, and maybe you even let TJ do that, because with his speed and
Mhm.
short area quickness, you might really be able to make a fool of some of those guards, and it'll be a tough time for them to double team him when he's on the inside like that. So I think it's something maybe he should explore a little. I'd like to see a little bit more overall production from Nick Herbig next year. His sack production and forced fumbles were awesome, but outside of that, his tackle total was very low.
Very.
So I feel like
Mhm.
he had the splash plays, but not enough involvement in the regular plays.
Mhm.
And we need him to start stepping up and helping more on the run defense. That's just an area I think that's an opportunity for him. And I'm not saying that I'm disappointed in him. I think Nick's an awesome third outside linebacker, but it's part of him being an undersized guy. So I'd like to see him focus again on trying to get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger in the offseason.
Middle linebacker room, we talked about Landon Roberts, letting him walk. We talked a little bit about Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen not being able to stack and shed. James, you shared that. Is this a position that needs to be highly sought after in free agency in the draft? Or is this a position where, hey, we really just need to bring somebody in who has a specialty of run stopping and play them and just allow them to take over that Landon Roberts thing? Or is that going to be Mark Robinson, mentality?
I think you've got the four guys already there. Maybe you add a fifth one to the group, but Cole Holcomb's ready to go. So we didn't even get to see Cole this year.
He didn't.
And Cole's a little bit better against the run, I feel like, than what Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson are. And I think Peyton Wilson can develop into being better against the run than he was this year. It was a lot for him this year.
It was.
It was a lot, and he played in a 4-3 defense in college. So he was used to being not a middle linebacker per se, but a either strong side or weak side off ball linebacker, similar but different, so it's a whole new thing for him. But I think, Mark Robinson and Cole Holcomb can be your thumpers in Patrick Queen and Wilson can be your pass specialists, and you can kind of mix it up a little bit. But I think your four core guys are already on the roster.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's a good thing that, that means it's a position we don't need to target. And you can focus on other positions like the cornerback.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, please.
Jill, do you have something you want to say?
No, you take it away. I'll
No.
I'll
I'm
go
letting
there.
I'm letting you roll with it.
Go ahead. No, I just you get it going. I'm gonna chime in. I got you.
Okay. Cornerback room, I feel like there's a lot of names in here that we talked about Cam Sutton being gone. We talked about letting Dante Jackson be gone. I think we need to see more Corey Trice. We need to see more Beanie Bishop.
Yes.
I think
And
those three guys, if you include Joey Porter Jr. in that, could potentially be your starters for next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we would be horribly off. I genuinely think Corey Trice would play better than Dante Jackson did at the end in the end stretch against man-to-man coverage. I also think interesting fact, Pittsburgh is the team with the dressed by a long percentage. I don't remember. I had it pulled up earlier and I think I got rid of it. There's a wide percentage between the number of times Pittsburgh uses two high safeties compared to one high safety when most teams in the NFL are running two high safeties. Pittsburgh runs Minka over that middle of the field so much more than most teams do. And I know that's probably because that's where he's comfortable and they want him to play naturally where he fits best. And he did a good job with that. People just quite frankly didn't throw the ball to him. But I think you're literally missing an aspect of the defense by almost not being able to run two high safeties. I feel like we were not good at it. We always ran zone underneath or man to man and playing 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. And then we'd get dinged and dunked and then not be able to tackle guys. It was just horrible.
We couldn't play zone. That was the thing.
But we couldn't play man either unless Joey Porter was doing it. That's it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we saw a lot of silly mistakes from Joey Porter. The zone defense was so bad. So bad. And that's why we got kicked by the Chiefs. Because that is Patrick Mahomes' sweet spot. So they were like, well, we'll run, the zone, and then we can't defend it. So
Yeah, that's tough when you have one good guy in man coverage and you don't have him for Patrick Mahomes. So that was a rough game.
that really was.
I'm with both of you on this. This team needs to very graciously allow Dante Jackson to leave in free agency. Sayonara to Cam Sutton. I think there's plenty of potential with Corey Trice. I think there's also plenty of potential with Beanie Bishop. Let's not forget CJ Henderson was stashed on the practice squad, so he'll likely sign a futures contract and be brought back as well. But I do think that they need to address this position in the draft. I would like to see it in the first 3 rounds. After the 3rd round, you don't expect somebody to be able to contribute year 1, and they might need this person to contribute year 1. In fact, they might need it to be cornerback number 2. So I expect them to probably do something in free agency. They never have shied away from signing corners in free agency. So maybe that's the big splash this year, is go find another guy like Joe Hayden. If you can find someone Joe Hayden had a couple good years before tailing off with us. They tried to do it again with Patrick Peterson. It didn't work. He was already beyond those years. But maybe you can find another guy like that and get a year or 2 before you have to invest highly at the corner position. But I think at least you've got Joey's great. Got to tighten up those penalties.
Yeah,
And some nice young pieces around him. But there's got to be at least one more piece. At least one more, either free agency or the draft, maybe both.
Yeah, I'm hoping they address it and do something. I do believe, similar, you could get another starter. Like, you could get someone to play better than Corey Trice. I don't know if that's necessarily the goal, and don't know if it's necessarily plausible with our draft picks and the other things we need to target. But what I don't want to see is them do the same thing where you're getting crap play out of Dante Jackson or somebody else, and you allow it to continue.
Yeah.
You can't, and I understand, like, who else are you going to play? Like, that was a big question the whole time. We had people to play.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, if people are not performing to whatever standard is apparently the standard, you need to get them out of there. I think too many times this year we were okay with getting burnt or keeping somebody in there because, that's our starter. We're going to stand by him. Nope. You're having a bad game. Come sit down.
Right. You're not playing up to the level we want.
Yeah. I think that would speak volumes to the team as well. That, hey, if you're not going to do it, you're gone, or you're for the game or whatever.
Well, and that even speaks to, I think you guys talked about it a couple shows ago, where it's like their passion for it is not there. Where it's like you've got guys like, Joey Porter, he gets a lot of penalties, but I feel like that comes out of he's playing with his heart. He's playing because he actually cares. And so you reward that and you penalize the ones who, quite frankly, are playing like crap. You'll see a switch in the culture, and then that'll translate on the field. Yeah.
So. I did find the highlight this year of Dante Jackson that I wanted to share with you guys briefly. It is probably the best highlight play we have of him all year long. I'm so excited for you guys to watch this. Dante Jackson, number 3 here, making a play. Phenomenal. Sorry, I had to lighten the mood a little bit. I thought you guys would enjoy that.
Oh my gosh.
God,
if you're not watching on YouTube, you should be. That was a funny video.
Listen, sometimes people can only listen on Spotify.
That's
you guys
true.
Are the
You're
best.
one of those people.
I am one of the people that listen from Spotify. You're the best pregame. Get me in the headspace for the
to be
game.
Depressed when we lose.
Okay, listen. Yeah,
we had a good year up until the last 4 games of the regular season. It was a good year. We got to enjoy a lot of winning football. And I wouldn't say good football, but we won the games. It felt like we had a chance because we were winning the close ones. We were keeping games close, and then it got to that final stretch, and things got out of hand.
Cody, this team was good enough. At one point, you predicted a 50-point game.
That's right.
They put up 40.
Yeah,
something
and for 50 in the next game.
James, I promise you right now, if they played every game like they did in that third quarter of the loss to the Ravens in the playoffs that we just witnessed, they would have put up 50 at least once this year.
Yeah.
There was no stopping us in that third quarter. I mean,
Yeah.
we were dinking and dunking to everybody. Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin getting
Yep.
lit up over the middle and hanging on to the ball. Pat Fryermuth, like
Keyword
George
over
Pickens.
the middle. Over
Yeah.
the middle is the key word there. Over the middle.
Yeah.
Speaking of over the
middle.
middle, like Pittsburgh really needs to make sure they bring Ben Skoranek back. I like that.
I
kid.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
I think he could be a really important part of the future. I like him in the Van Jefferson role. If you want somebody to be a blocker out there, but actually be useful while running routes, I think Ben Skoranek would be a massive upgrade over Van Jefferson.
I'm curious just to look at something because we're talking about the passing over the middle before we talk about the safety room here. So real quick, you want to talk about passing over the middle in between the lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, what was the last game Pittsburgh won? Would have been week.
Oh,
The Browns game,
5
right?
weeks ago against the Browns in Cleveland,
Yep.
right? Or no, in Pittsburgh. Because I was at the game.
Was
in
that week
Cleveland.
13?
Nice.
I think
Well,
I don't
it
know if it was
wasn't
week
because it was my
13.
birthday and we lost.
Oh, I thought you
Terrible.
said you were at the Cleveland game. that we
No,
won.
I was at the game where we played in Cleveland. It was a
Oh.
literal blizzard.
Yeah, that was a bad game.
It was rough. It was tough being a Steeler fan that day.
Yeah, that's fair. I want to show you guys something. This was the playoff game that we just lost. This was the throwing chart from Next Gen Stats for Russell Wilson. Obviously those 2 passes to the outside and deep were the touchdowns. 3, if you count the incomplete, that was up over the middle to Calvin Austin. 3 passes total inside the hashes. 3. It's not a threat. They're literally taking away a third of the field pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's like those types of like throwing in the middle when you have, I'm going back to my Darnell speech, but like throw it over the middle to your 6'7" giant. I don't know.
There were 7 passes attempts, 2 or behind the line of scrimmage.
And only 6 of them past 10 yards.
Yep.
Right. 3rd and 22, and we throw for 6 yards.
I just wanted to put that in perspective. It had to be looked at. This was one of the games that we won, and I still hate, and it's not working right. Why is it not pulling up the right stuff? Give me a second to get this pulled up correctly. It's showing me the last game for him instead of the other one.
You want to talk safeties next?
Yeah,
Cody?
let's talk safeties.
Right?
Let's talk
So-
safeties.
Minka Fitzpatrick maybe didn't put the numbers up this year that everyone was looking for, but I feel like it's because he had to play linebacker a lot. So he was cleaning up a ton and also having to help with whoever Dante Jackson was covering most of the season. So I think we would have seen a lot more number-wise out of him had that not been the case. Deshaun Elliott started the season incredible, was making all kinds of plays, and then kind of tailed off. And there was a stretch there where they were using DeMonte KZ a lot instead of him. I didn't like that at all. I thought KZ's play was a step further backwards than what it was last year. And maybe my biggest disappointment is I really wanted to see Ryan Watts, and he got hurt in the preseason and never got a chance to play. So I really wanted to see what he could be as a possible long-term solution or at least depth piece. And he never really got on the field. So, do they need to turn over heads here? Do we need to look at the safety position? Are we okay with those starters? What are you thinking, Joe?
I mean, I agree with you about like with Minka not having a lot of splash plays, but I feel like he was so consistent and quarterbacks just know better than to throw near him. Like they just know better. So they don't, or he'll have to cover or pick up the slack for somebody who's not actually doing their job.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be his position. You know what I mean? Like each man out there should do their job. And when you have half your defense that's not doing their job, it's kind of hard for the other team or for the our other players to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I feel like I wish I would have seen more with Deshaun Elliott. Like you said, I would like seeing KZ in there. I'm still kind of I just want to see more. Like I just want to see more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
No.
I'm with you guys. I want to see more. I think Deshaun Elliott's a big thumper, big hitter, but I
mhm.
don't know if it's starting caliber play from him. Minka's Minka. We know that, even though he had a
Right.
quiet year. But it's just crazy. Real quick, this is the game against Cincinnati that we won. And you can see the number of passes thrown over the middle.
Yeah.
Here. I
Mhm.
mean, still none of them passed 5 or 10 yards, but still. Just nice to see the difference in those things. If you're not watching on YouTube, sorry you don't get to see that chart.
Go look it up.
Yeah, next gen stats. If you go to nextgenstats.nfl.com, you can look at all the charts and stuff. It's very interesting and unique and good to see. Kind of breaks
Oh,
things down a little different for you.
Right. It's good to see the visual when it's like, sometimes I feel like I'm in my head where I'm like, why aren't we doing that? And then I see that and I'm like, oh no, I am right.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy.
They even have that. You can even look up players. I'm not going to pull this up right now, but you can look up players' routes that they run in each game and see when the ball was thrown to them, when when they had a touchdown, stuff like that. And like seeing some of the routes that are run, like Pat Freiermuth doesn't often go downfield, and I think he needs to. I think he's
Yeah.
a George. He's right up. He should be right up there with George Kittle and Travis Kelce,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
Mark Andrews and these guys. He's that talented. He's that special, but we're not using him the same way, and that's the frustrating part. Special teams, we can bounce to special teams. Boswell needs to stay a Steeler forever.
Forever. Never
he
let
need-
him go.
Yeah.
Boz
There's a
for
terrible
president,
towel.
baby.
Boz
Boz
for
for
president.
president.
Yep.
Boss for MVP. In
Somebody-
Boss we trust.
We definitely are the ones that said that the first time, and I heard it somewhere else. Somebody say Boz for president. I was like,
Good.
I wonder if they listen to the show.
Good, because we started that back in 2019.
Yeah.
Boss for president. Mhm.
Yeah. Somebody
Mhm.
heard it, and I don't remember where I heard the quote or whatever. And maybe it's basic enough that somebody else might have said it before.
Could be.
No, but you guys can. We'll let you have the credit for that.
Yeah. Thanks. Corliss Waitman come back as a body, but I really do want to see. Was it Colquitt?
Cameron Johnston.
Cameron Johnston. I don't know why I said Colquitt. I really want to see him be healthy and play again. He's under a 2-year contract, right?
I think Johnson signed a 3-year deal and Waitman
Okay.
signed a 2-year deal because they weren't anticipating Johnson being healthy for next season either with how bad the injury was.
Okay, so that's good. We're gonna hopefully get to see
Yeah.
him again. So, and Corliss Waitman did fairly well. Like
Better than Snacks.
Yeah.
That's what I call
Snacks. Is that who you're calling Presley Harvin?
Yes.
Fair nickname, though.
That's almost as bad as Noah with Quarter Pounder Patterson.
Yeah,
Dang.
we all called him Snacks because I mean that was so bad.
It was bad.
I could punt better than that. Like,
And
Yeah.
I do feel bad because he was going through stuff off the field that I think just got to him.
Yeah.
Didn't he lose like 2 family members in the same like week or something? I don't know.
Yeah. It was like a parent and then a grandparent died within like a week of each other and
dang.
kind of devastated him pretty badly. But no doubt Corliss Waitman was drastically better than
Way
what
better.
Presley Harvin was. So
Yeah.
that is the special teams were a nice change at least,
Mhm.
A very,
I mean, even
very
the
consistent
return
football.
we didn't get any big returns, but Jalen Warren seemed pretty solid when he got a chance on kick return.
Mhm.
The new kickoff style, there's not many kick returns that happen.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Calvin Austin just didn't get good blocking on most of his punt returns.
I think he had one for a touchdown, didn't he?
You're right. Calvin did
Yeah.
have one
Mhm.
for touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So-
I mean that's something anyway. Just I want to see another running back there with Jalen Warren next year. If Jalen's the starter, then you can't have him back there at all.
Right.
And I don't want to see Cordero Patterson returning kicks anymore. That was bad.
Yeah.
You just,
That experiment
I'm
is
over someone casually trotting out of the end zone and barely making it to the 20.
Mhm.
You could do that when your name is Devin Hester and barely trotting is still fast.
Yes. It's
Like,
been a while since Cordero Patterson's been fast, I'm pretty sure.
That's mean.
Fair.
Factual.
Fair. Right.
Let's not forget Cody.
Christian Kuntz is going to be
Christian Coates.
back. He has his own
Consistent.
podcast as well, but he will be back.
His show's funny, man. I like seeing stuff from his show.
I
Yeah, I
didn't know he
know.
had a podcast. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Everyone has a podcast. It's
Yeah.
Literally.
It's wonderful.
Joe, here's the thing about this. When we started, there were less than 10 Steelers podcasts. This was 2019. It was
Uh-huh.
pre-COVID. I was like, all right, there's an opportunity here. Let's see if we can break through. And we saw some nice progress those first couple of years. And then COVID hit. And now
And
there's
then-
well over 100 Steelers podcasts. And
No.
probably 15 or 20 of them with active or former Pittsburgh Steelers on them.
Well, that's fair. I was like, Ben's got his own podcast,
Yeah.
you know, and
Cam's got one, Patrick Peterson, Bryant McFadden, Christian Coates. You go right down the list. They all have one.
dang.
Yeah, it's still and let's take a second to be happy about this as well. We are still listed in the top 11 Pittsburgh Steelers podcasts.
Hey!
According to podcast.feedspot.
Let's go.
.com. Feedspot.com is a pretty good website when looking at stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure we're ahead of some former players. Or at least we
A
were
lot
at some point. Yeah. I mean, there was a couple things, but when you look at them, and we don't mind giving credit to where credit is due, or people shout outs on the show. The Terrible Podcast, which is Steelers Depot, one that James listens to religiously.
Yes.
It
They're
leads the
coming
way,
into-
and they're phenomenal. Locked On Steelers with Christopher Carter is also fantastic. Steelers
He's incredible.
Standard is listed there. The Steel City Blitz podcast is also listed. SNR Drive with Matt and Dale. Believe
Are
in
these-
Steelers, which is Ike
That's
Taylor's,
Taylor.
Ike
Yeah.
Taylor's
Ike
podcast.
Taylor. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
The
Oh my
Arthur
God.
Moats Experience
Yeah.
with Deep Arthur Moats. Steelers
No.
Realm. Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, which is Steel City Underground, and then Steelers Update on Penn Live, which is a fairly newer one, if I'm not mistaken. I could be
Yeah,
wrong
but
on
that's like professionals on that too.
Yeah, yeah.
I gotta go
Um,
listen to Ike Taylor. That's hilarious.
that. Ike's a fun guy. Ike
I
is a fun
believe it.
guy.
I believe it.
But yeah, we're listed as 11th, so we appreciate all the love and support that you guys give us. Even those who just listen on Spotify. Just kidding. I'm
But
just
you get
kidding.
that listen, okay?
do.
You get
We
that
do.
listen.
Huge.
And we always
That's what
get
matters.
It
feedback.
helps.
We always get messages like Joe's like, "You're right. I hate."
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
It's a good time.
In all caps. We haven't
Yeah.
touched that subject yet, by the way,
What subject?
of our different opinions on the coaching staff.
Well, we're here now. We went through everything.
There you
I
go.
think it's a great way to wrap up the show. Let's talk about it. Joe, why don't you take the lead on this? Tell us your opinion on the coaching staff. Who would you keep? Who would you get rid of? Do you get rid of everybody? Do you keep anybody?
Everybody. Get rid of everybody. I'm done. I'm so done. We talked a little bit before this, but I am done with it being we just make the playoffs and then we lose in the first round. I'm so tired of that being our standard, because at the end of the day, we're still sitting where with all the teams who didn't make the playoffs. And so, I mean, Mike Tomlin's not going anywhere, but I would love for him to go somewhere. Because at this point, when we're just slightly above average, and that feels like that's okay. And I'm like, that's not okay for a city who, like, football runs so deep in our culture and in our blood. Like, even just I moved to Ohio because, you know, I'm originally from Pittsburgh area, and football is different here. Like, it's not the same pride, or like I just feel like it has such a deeper importance in Pittsburgh than it does in other cities. And so when it's just this 10-7 nonsense, like we deserve more than that. Guys like TJ Watt, like Cam Hayward, who are putting their heart and soul into our team, and like no team accolades, no Super Bowls. I shouldn't say no Super Bowls, but like for TJ, like, you know, what does he have to show for all the work that he's doing besides his personal? You know, like as a team, what kind of thing are we looking for? And Arthur Smith, I'm done with him. You know, he was better than Canada, in my opinion. I have some friends that say that Canada was better than Arthur Smith. I think we at least had a 4-page playbook instead of a front and back with 3 calls like Matt Canada had.
That's fair.
Well, like Matt Canada was so bad. They fired him the week of my birthday, and everybody was like, "Look at what the Steelers got you for your birthday." And I
What a
was like, "What a gift!" But I think I think the most pressing need would be offensive coordinator, in my opinion. We talked about getting creative with plays, and we're not doing that. We're running the same thing. The defense knows how to defend it. We're not utilizing our weapons that we actually have. So,
Yep.
There's my very calm 2 cents. Normally I'm more heated about this, but
Cody, why don't you go ahead next?
You want me to go? You
Yeah.
want me to go because I'm going to be kind of on the same page as her. I know what you're doing. No, I am in a similar boat. When I look at some of our last playoff wins, and losses, we lost to, Tim Tebow a few years ago back in, I don't remember what it was, 2012.
yeah.
We lost to Blake Bortles in 2018 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We lost to Alex Smith in 2017, which, don't get me wrong, Alex Smith is a good player, but he was nearing the end of his career. And it's just, we beat Alex Smith nearing the end of his career, not lost to. It's just frustrating. The AFC is definitely the powerhouse, in my opinion. I think the NFC has two in the past few years, the NFC has had two teams roughly on average that were like, they got a chance. The AFC is quarterback happy. The AFC is offense driven, offense happy. I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson,
Joey Burrow.
Yeah, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield when he was with Cleveland was even a powerhouse. The AFC is definitely harder, but I am tired of the standard being a quote when it means nothing. And I'm not trying to say that, and this is the most, I'm being respectful. I want everyone to know that. I respect Coach Mike Tomlin. I actually love Coach Mike Tomlin. He's a man of faith. He very much prioritizes family and faith and all the things. He lives his life right, but I think he allows some things in his lifestyle to bleed too much into football, where he's not aggressive enough with certain players. Mm-hmm. He's not as hard as he needs to be on people that he not directly is paying, but he is the boss. He's the manager. If I was a manager, and I have been in the past, and I'm currently a supervisor at my job, if people below me were not doing their jobs correctly, I come down on them. Like, I tell them, hey, you're not doing the job right. Hey, I need you to do this. Hey, we need to fix this. I haven't had to do that at my new job yet, but someday I might get there. It comes to the point where Mike Tomlin has a beautiful way of selling himself, of selling his mentality. He's a car salesman through and through, and not in the bad way that car salesmen are car salesmen. Car salesmen like to screw everyone off, and it's big mess and overpay and this and that. Some people are good. I'm not shouting out everybody, but I know how the car sales business is, and it's tough. Mike Tomlin can say everything right in an interview by saying things that are just Mike Tomlinisms. Like, he sounds so well off. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He won't put blame on people, as a coach shouldn't, but he also doesn't address the issues. And I think his hand is too involved in the offense and the defense. He's a defensive-minded coach. He shouldn't have anything to do with the offense. Hire an offensive coordinator and let them coordinate the offense. That's their job. Mike Tomlin was quoted after the Bengals game saying that we didn't want to be a team that turned the ball over, and basically referencing why we ran so much. Well, it's why we lost. It's why we're losing games, is because we're trying to force the run. And we talked about it on the last show, James and I did. And James referenced, especially myself, calling the team to pass the ball more on first down. And then we do to start the game off, and Pat Freiermuth drops it. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I think it was too late for change. I'm not saying that just like to justify the drop. I'm not saying anything, but this team is so used to losing and not playing well and being frustrated with their performance and play calling and everything. I can see it all over their face all the time. I mean, George Pickens may be over the top outwardly with some of his things and his antics, but he's doing all the things that the entire team is feeling. I promise you that. Like, the offensive line is frustrated. Najee Harris, we have seen multiple times be frustrated by not getting blocking, by not, the certain play calls. I'm sure these guys don't like to keep doing the same thing and losing. And I think we got to see a lot of that frustration come out after this game when TJ Watt was asked, what does this team need to do to kind of turn things around? And he just said, that's above my pay grade. It's because these guys love Coach Mike Tomlin, but they don't want to say we need something different. We need something to happen. We need something to change. And I think they're doing that out of respect to him because he is a good coach. He's a good man. But quite frankly, I don't think Mike Tomlin needs to leave, but he needs to have certain responsibilities and power stripped from him. He needs to focus on other areas. He needs to focus on other things. He can be a part of those meetings and be in that and see what the offense wants to try and do and what Arthur Smith wants to do, but let them do their thing for a couple weeks and see what happens. Because I genuinely don't think he has. And I know that's a massive assumption. And I can acknowledge that, but I don't think that the team has been able to do what the other coaches have wanted to do, because I don't think we'd be seeing the same thing over and over again. That's my opinion. I love Coach Mike Tomlin. I hope he stays. I hope he continues his success of over 500, but I hope we start winning playoff games, because I'm tired of sitting here in mid-January wondering, hey, what quarterback are we going to use next year? Because we definitely can't draft one because we're too far back and there's no free agency that's really there, and it's just frustrating. But James, what are your thoughts?
I think that where we're at with this at this point, even the most staunch Mike Tomlin supporter, and I'm probably up there pretty high on that list, has to admit that what we're getting right now just isn't enough. And in the thought of the leadership pyramid on things, when you're nearing the end of people having faith and trust in you, you have to make changes in the people that you're trusting the most. And that's both coordinators. So if I'm Mike Tomlin, if we don't see Arthur Smith getting hired by somebody else as a head coach, then he does need to move on from Arthur Smith, because the offense was not creative enough. It was not utilizing the talents of the team. Maybe it was just a bad marriage with his style of coaching versus Russell's style of throwing the ball. He doesn't really like to throw to tight ends. Arthur Smith wants to use tight ends. Arthur Smith wants to use all the running backs, including third string guys that aren't any good. And that's not appropriate. You need to use your best talented guys. So I think that he's put his faith in the wrong people, and we've had some spurts here and there that were good. But even on the defensive side of the ball, you have to let the defensive coordinator go too. We're not seeing enough. It's not creative. Time after time, we're hearing players from opposing teams talking about, oh, we know exactly what they're going to run. We know what they're going to do. I mean, honestly, what's the game plan when we talk about wide receivers from an opposing team? We put Joey Porter Jr. on the number 2 wide receiver, and then we put our number 2 corner, whoever that may be at the time, on their number 1, and hope that everybody else can help enough to stop them. And it ain't working. It's a bad strategy. It's not working. It's a new strategy, but it's a bad one. You need to start putting Joey Porter Jr. on the number 1, because the other guys just can't handle. I mean, putting Corey Trice on Jamar Chase was just cruel and unusual punishment. That was like waterboarding the poor kid. That's not
literally
like he did pretty dang well in regards to what that could have been against the guy that won the Triple Crown. And you see the frustration, and I think like what you guys referenced with, say, like TJ Watt talking about that's above my pay grade. I think that's a respect thing, because literally, like, he knows, like, TJ isn't just there because he's an athletic freak. He is an athletic freak, but he's very smart. He studies lots of film. He knows when people overset on their steps. He knows when he can counter inside. He knows tendencies. That's why he pats so many balls down. And he knows which one of his teammates suck. And he's too good of a teammate to get out there in that interview and be like, oh, yeah, man, we got to get rid of Ogunjobi. He's a bum. Like, he ain't going to say that. I'm allowed to say it because I'm on a podcast. Like, Larry's never going to hunt me down and come after me. So I'm allowed to say that
you better knock on wood.
If he does, I'm screwed. That dude's huge. But TJ is not going to say that stuff because he knows he'd be stepping on Tomlin's toes. He feels like it would be disrespectful because it's not his job to do it. It's his job to go out there and kick the butt of whoever he's going against and do as much as he can on defense. But it is not his job to tell the coaches how to make the changes.
Mm-hmm.
So it is quite literally above his pay grade, even though he makes more money than the coaches that make those decisions. So to me, you've got to turn over both coordinators and probably a lot of position coaches as well. And the big thing for me on the defensive coordinator is that if you can't figure out how to scheme things differently to stop the run and to slow down some of these passes, like you had people in place. I saw way too many times where we kept on trotting our nickel defense out there when it was an obvious running situation, and we had 2 defensive linemen trying to stop 5 offensive linemen. And it doesn't work. It didn't work once, and it never will work. There are personnel issues, and we're trotting the wrong people on the field. And Tomlin isn't telling them who to put on the field. The coordinators make those decisions. They're the ones that put Van Jefferson out there for 67% of the offensive snaps just for him to get, 15 catches on the year? It's a waste.
Yeah.
Let's put people out there with abilities. They're on the team. There's no reason this team shouldn't have been able to march off 12 or 13 wins this season.
24 receptions on the year.
24. It's embarrassing for a guy that played 67% of the snaps.
Right.
How in the world do you only get 24 receptions when you're the starting wide receiver in 17 games?
Because you don't prioritize the pass and you don't have a good enough blocking scheme to block long enough to let the quarterback pass. And the quarterback can't see over the line to pass the ball. There's a lot of issues, James. There's a lot of reasons.
And Van Jefferson isn't a good receiver. That's the biggest issue.
Right.
I don't think
so
I don't think
slow
he's
that he
bad.
stopped and turned around to look and see if Mike Hilton was going to run him down or not.
That's true.
Mike Hilton, when he was a rookie, was a 4.58 guy, and he's way slower now. And he looked back and stopped running forwards because he thought Mike Hilton was going to run him down. That's not a starting wide receiver.
James, tell us how you really feel.
I'm here for it. This is great.
Lots of personnel changes, lots of coaching changes, and Mike Tomlin's on the very last end of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If they don't get drastically better in the next year or two, then he's got to go. But at this point, he needs to get rid of both of his coordinators and start over because you didn't have the drop-off in talent in pass rushers. So why did we stop getting so many sacks?
Yep.
We didn't have the drop-off in talent in Minkah Fitzpatrick. Why did he stop getting so many interceptions?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we putting him in a position where he's a linebacker?
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yep.
too many things going wrong from how we're assigning people to do their jobs. And those things are the responsibility of the coordinators. And he needs to just say, I know that I had these guys under contract. I know I promised them a job until next year, but they weren't good enough, and I've got to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you on it, Cody. The loyalty part, he needs to be able to look at it from a business perspective and say, you weren't good enough at your job, you've got to go.
And it needs to be the same with players as it is coaches.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Anything else, James?
No, I think that's about all I really need to say on it.
Okay, then I'm gonna end the show with this. We were ranked top 10 in 2 stats, and we were ranked 10th. Total rush yards allowed per game, where we only allowed 109.83, and then average score against, so average scores that against us, which was 20.83. Our average score for was 21.89. So we scored average 1.06 points more than the people we were playing.
Last year, we had a winning record, and the opponents outscored us last year.
That's true. But real quick, let's go down these numbers. So total yards per game, we were ranked 23rd. Rush yards per game, we were ranked 12th. That's not horrible. Pass yards per game, we were ranked 26th.
Yeah.
That is horrible.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah. Average score for that 21.89 is 19th. Total yards allowed per game, we were ranked 15th. So pretty much dead center.
Dead middle.
Yeah.
And then defensive passing yards allowed, we were ranked 24th. So we know where the issues are.
Yep.
We know what we need to fix. We just got to hope this team can get stuff figured out, get it together, and hopefully turning things around next year. If you guys have anything you want to share with us, feel free to DM us or comment on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you guys being here. Jill, we thank you for being here. Jill from Ohio is here.
Joe from Ohio.
Jill from Ohio. And we can't thank you guys enough for listening. Be sure to like and follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell. It's free. It doesn't cost you a thing. Don't forget the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Make James here very happy. And until next time, this is your host, James and Cody, with special guest Jill from Ohio. Signing off.
Peace.